Are you going to Katie's party, Graham, in Rockford?
Probably, probably.
Yeah, you gotta go
I
to that one.
I
I don't
can't.
think I'm gonna go as out as last year, but I think I will make an appearance.
He went as a banana.
I love
No, I went
it.
as corn.
I like
Was it
the
corn?
costumes.
Yeah, corn man.
No, it was a yellow vegetable or fruit of some kind.
That's
I'll
funny.
Yeah, I
go
think
with
you
corn.
should do banana this time.
Yeah, I like that.
Mix it
I'm
up a
being
bit.
pressured into potentially hosting at my house, FYI, Gabe. Because no one else is taking one for the team. It's like someone has to host on like next Friday is when we want to dress up. So
Yeah.
we might be the ones.
You gotta get all the spooky decor ahead of time. Hello, and welcome back to the As I Understand It podcast. This is the work-life podcast about careers, adulthood, and the evolving world we live in. Each episode, we'll ask 3 different questions, 2 relating to the work and lives of our wonderful guests. We're gonna discuss the facts, give our perspectives, and if we're lucky, maybe leave with more questions than we came in with. As always, I'm your host, Cameron Geddes.
And I'm your co-host, Graham Nesbitt.
And today on the podcast, we have 1 recurring guest and 1 new friendly face. Our guests for today are Gabe Penegor and Savannah Britt. Before we get started with our topics for today, I think we'll just say a few words about ourselves. My name is Cameron Geddes. I'm 25 years old and graduated from Hope College in May of 2021 with degrees in economics and global studies. I work as a retail sales analyst right now with the Kraft Heinz company. I recently moved to Oak Creek, Wisconsin with my girlfriend. And in my free time, I'm typically found weightlifting, playing video games, and recently working on my Halloween costume. Graham, would you like to go next?
Yeah, my name's Graham Nesbitt. I am 26 years old. Graduated from Wheaton College in 2021 and have been working in addictions in the Rockford region. In my free time, I enjoy reading, playing video games, and animating.
Thanks, Graham. And then, Gabe, since you've been on before, would you like to reintroduce yourself?
Yep. I'm Gabe Penegor. I'm still client success manager over at NielsenIQ, working in large food. 27. I went to undergrad at CU Boulder, Sco Buffs. Looking pretty good at football this year. Graduated in 2020 with a marketing degree, and then went on to go and get my master's in market research and data science. Currently living in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm joined today by our new guest, my girlfriend, Savannah Britt. So, in my free time, I'm usually found coding, trying to work on some sports betting models or video gaming, golfing, hiking, anything outside. Been a little limited as I don't have a car right now, but still getting after it.
It's just grab one of those golf carts from the course and use that to
Might
connect the
steal one.
dots.
Yeah, I'm gonna steal one soon.
Sounds like a
Get
good
them
plan.
on video game world.
Exactly. Savannah, I think you're our last guest then today.
Yeah, so I'm the oldest here. I just turned 28. I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill in 2018, so really old. Living in Charlotte for the last 4.5 years, from Wilmington, North Carolina originally. Um, I work as a recruiter for a tech company based in California, and our clients are Google, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, just to name a few. And in my free time, I like to read, write, work out, travel a lot, and hang out with my dog, Presley.
Nice. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for being able to make it on today. Thanks for taking the time. And I think without further ado, we'll go into our first topic of today and actually pass it back to Savannah. What is a surprising thing recruiters look for when hiring? Definitely an enigma in the minds of people out there on the job hunt right now. I have some stats here from iSmartRecruit. They're an AI recruitment software for agencies and HRs. They list their top 6 characteristics that recruiters look for as passion, high EQ, which is, I believe, emotional intelligence roughly, commitment, communication, track record, and teamwork. So here's a clip from a article they wrote. All of the employee qualities are certainly important, but none as important as being passionate about the work. Passion is the one trait that makes the most difference in employee output and their commitment towards the company. And then I'll skip down a little bit. Companies also want to hire employees that have high EQ or emotional quotient. Candidates with low EQ tend to damage the work environment as they demotivate themselves as well as other employees. And then the management has to spend a lot of time rectifying this by converting the negative work environment to a positive and zealous environment. So, Savannah, do you want to give us your perspective as a recruiter yourself?
Yeah, I mean, hiring decisions are so important because turnover is expensive. And, I have a lot of friends in the job market right now who have been affected by layoffs. So definitely talk about this topic a lot. And I even did a workshop this past week about like career transitions and navigating that and giving like tips that recruiters look for when hiring. So one thing going off of what you said that I was thinking about is maybe surprising. Maybe people don't think of to answer this question is definitely emotional intelligence. This is something that, I've a topic I've been passionate about for a long time. And the 5 pillars of emotional intelligence, EQ, are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And these are super crucial to recruiters. And you can usually tell pretty early on. I mean, I talk to candidates every day. And I try to go into my interviews, making them feel at ease and comfortable. And the more like real and conversational an interview is, the better in my opinion. So I try to be really personable and down to earth. I even put my dog in interviews sometimes. And it really can show their interpersonal skills and how well they communicate and just pick up on social cues. And a high EQ can show, that a candidate can handle whether it's remote or in person, can handle teamwork and feedback and stress effectively. So it really highlights their ability to collaborate, and communication is obviously one of the most important skills in any job. So I would say emotional intelligence in short.
Yeah, that definitely tracks in my experience, and I like that you um, kind of keyed us in on some of the additional five. Would you say the 5 emotional pillars? Five.
Yeah, the 5 pillars of emotional intelligence are self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And then another thing, just to add quickly, is curiosity is super important. As a recruiter, I look for that. So someone who asks good questions, and you can just tell they're genuinely curious about the role in the company. That seems like an obvious thing, but you'd be surprised. Some candidates can come off as entitled, and having like curiosity, and it shows that you want to have a learning mindset and that you're coachable.
Got it. Yeah, that's good. Good context there. Gabe, you want to tack anything onto that?
I would just have to, echo that sentiment of curiosity. That's been kind of a recurring theme, as I've gone through my career journey and, moved through different roles. I've been in probably 6 different roles now with, different clients and things like that, moving around. And the thing I think that's really given me that opportunity to do so is just my curiosity and the, constant desire to learn more about the business and learn more about the clients that I'm helping serve. So, like, that's always something that, when I am on the job market, I really do emphasize. My natural curious, by nature, I'm a curious person. So it's a little bit easier, but yeah, you really do have to have that passion, as, that article had kind of cited. And the communication skills are something that, are the soft skills that you have to really just kind of work on and, kind of go out on a leg or a limb, so to say, and just take a shot at it and just work on it until you get better. There's a lot of, resources out there now, especially with AI, where you can practice interviewing and prep for certain questions and things like that. So I think, just having that curiosity and really showing it in the interview is important, like Savannah said.
Yeah, I think that's another great point there of just continually showing off your curiosity and really nailing down the practice. I don't have a ton to add on those two, just because you've both covered it so well. But I'll say too, from the perspective of when you're in the interview or even leading up to it, I think it's good to, in my experience, it's been good to try to see the recruiter as your partner, like as your friend. I think a lot of people take these very hostile positions with recruiters, which is crazy because again, those are the people essentially that would get you at least in the manager interview. And I get why, because I think people are just generally now very cautious and antagonistic towards high power differential situations. Like any high power differential situation, people just kind of shut down and see it as a conflict. But I think really the only way to stabilize that in any fair sense is to, one, represent yourself really well and try to speak to your knowledge. But outside of that, try to see the recruiter as your ally and just see what they need, go above and beyond to provide supporting documentation and references, try to make their job easier. I've definitely had times in the past where recruiters who previously didn't know me from anybody, it felt like, maybe after the phone interview, we already had a good sense about each other and I knew what they typically were looking for as far as how to essentially pitch me to the internal managers and so on. And they knew kind of what to ask me to facilitate that. So that was the only way to really kind of neutralize the balance and see it as a win-win for the two of us. And I think any good recruiter who um, sees the value in you, they're going to appreciate you making your job easier. So
that's
yeah.
true.
glad to hear it was, that's that one passes the smell test with our certified recruiter here. But Graham, any thoughts before we go on to the next question?
Yeah. One I would say is just having a good idea of, this is kind of a standard one, but I think it can be expounded upon a bit. Knowing your personal motivation for why you want to work at that specific company. I work in pretty much the health field, dealing with addictions and recovery. So one of the questions that they had brought up was, do you have any family members that you've seen it, any personal experience in that area? So just kind of bringing in a personal element to it can definitely be helpful and a good thing to be prepared for.
Definitely agree with that.
Knowing your why.
Yeah, I like that. Thanks for putting that out there, Graham. All right, well, I think we're ready for our next question then. How have you seen companies use data effectively? And Gabe and I, this is going to be something we're very familiar with. But any additional context from Savannah and Graham, feel free to throw that in. So I do have some data from the data storage company Seagate. They say that based on this report they fielded, data management is increasingly important as data proliferates. IDC, who I'm not sure they are, but maybe I'll tag that in the header or something up here. They project that over the next 2 years, enterprise data will grow at a 42.2% annual rate. Only 32% of data available to enterprises is actually put to work. The remaining 68% is unleveraged. The top 5 barriers to putting data to work are making data usable, managing the storage of collected data, which they're a data storage company, so you can see why they'd put that up there, ensuring that needed data is collected, ensuring the security of collected data, and making the different silos of collected data available. And I've seen that too from some other coursework and just stuff I've heard at work, is that there's a lot of dark data out there that is stored but never ends up getting used because it's just not able to be parsed, or they're not really interested in doing the work. So Gabe, as you're still in the market research field, if you want to kick us off on this one.
Oh yeah, I mean, just from the start of the top 5 barriers that you had listed, I mean, making collected data usable, that's really a big challenge, especially when you're working with any sort of survey or panelist-based data. You got to really rely on these panelists to be either self-reporting or you have access to scraping their email receipts or some form of that. And even when you've done so, all of that collected data, like Cam was saying, some of these receipts aren't, readable by machine learning or a human. Sometimes they shorten the descriptions to the point where we have something that we like to call detail unknown. It's just, a characteristic of data that makes it a little bit tricky to work with. But once you do have that, collected data, which I think, like you said, Cam, a lot of companies are doing and utilizing, but not putting to work for their own strategies or forward-looking kind of business plans. You really have to make sure that you're working with clean data. You're trying to paint the full picture. If you're on the brand side, that means you're purchasing data from multiple different data vendors so that you can get a better understanding of point of sale, in-store data, as well as that panel component. And then there's always that aspect of data governance and security. Once that needed data is collected and you need to store it somewhere, the cloud seems to be where everyone is kind of moving towards. So really making sure that data is secure and stored in some sort of central data lake. And you really do need a team of pretty smart and savvy data scientists who can help edit, transform, and load that data into those data lakes. And then on the other side of that, you have your UI and UX product folks who then take that data from the data lakes and put it into whatever output or platform that you're using. So those barriers are there. That's why there's market research companies like Circana, like NielsenIQ. I think AI has really opened the door for a lot of smaller businesses. I was actually speaking with the head of Google and YouTube's media, like measurement data and analytics the other week. And she said that a lot of small and medium businesses, especially with, generative AI's creative component, have been able to, create commercials or, advertising pieces, digital media, things of that nature at a fraction of the cost of what it would normally be to, get a real person to, go demo that product for a photo shoot or shoot film for a commercial. So I thought that was a really, interesting insight. And it's something that, Google's helping these small businesses do kind of in this AI, I almost want to say like arms race war that we have going on right now.
Yeah, and I'll follow up with Gabe said. We'll definitely get into the AI stuff here with our final question. But I think from what I've seen from the data perspective, data is definitely getting more ubiquitous. It's definitely getting used at a much faster rate and more intelligently than it was before. I mean, even smaller companies, I think now are kind of learning that the because so many products and services have already been created, now it's definitely more competitive than it used to be to just keep your market share intact. So definitely data is now, I think, seen as useful as it should be. But in terms of how it's actually used, I mean, there's all sorts of things from like forecasting and segmentation and uh, different like regression techniques and factor analysis. Like there's so many different ways to parse things. Um, there's so many different ways to parse things and use data. I think a lot of time it's just about using the right tool for the right need. And what I've often found too is there can sometimes even internally be big discrepancies between like your analytics team and your sales team or your marketing team, or um, a lot of times you have some people that are extremely robust and they know a bunch of programming languages and they have all these really intricate tools. And that might be your analytics team, but then your sales team might not. Sometimes they're not even into the advanced features of Excel. I mean, I've had people that I would say are quite competent, generally speaking, and are pretty crucial elements of how some teams function, but they didn't use like pivot charts or anything or pivot tables where you kind of just filter your data effectively. And that's really, I would say in most situations, that is all you need. But if you don't know how to do even that, then you're kind of in trouble. So
Right.
just having some pretty qualified people and picking the right tool for the right job, because I've had a lot of times too where people try to get an Excel to do something that a coding project would be better suited, and they might be using like sales data to try to do segmentation when that's not, when they don't really have all the information they need on that, or they are trying to run with data that hasn't been cleaned and then try to retroactively clean it, which you just can't do. So
or massaging the data,
yeah,
kind of fits your needs. That's always something that you kind of have to internally struggle with. You want there to be a story, you want there to be growth, but sometimes that's not the case, and
yeah,
you have to
sometimes you
take
just
a
can't.
hard look at the data and actually just say, hey, we have an opportunity here. We're underperforming. So to
Right.
say.
Yeah, I agree with Gabe's take there. I'm not sure if Savannah and Graham, you want to add anything before we get to our last question here?
Yeah, I can quickly from a recruiting standpoint. I mean, obviously companies leverage data in a lot of different ways, but we use it in talent acquisition, predictive analytics to help forecast hiring needs based on turnover trends and business growth, seasonal demands, LinkedIn talent insights. That's something my manager uses to track hiring patterns and optimize our talent pipelines. We also use it for employee engagement, like doing pulse surveys, and then performance and DEI metrics is another area that data can be helpful. So it just helps us to make more informed, proactive decisions overall. And yeah, obviously super important in any industry, any company.
Graham, anything to add?
Yeah, one thing that the company that I work on, I've seen as far as using data, the CEO he does a pretty good job of keeping all the employees informed of kind of the progress of the company. He'll have often emails with a lot of the data throughout the year, trends with it. He keeps the data pretty open, even if it's positive or negative, he puts it out there. And I think he does a good job of keeping all the employees on track towards the common goal of the company. So it kind of gives everyone a share in that. So using the data to keep the employees informed and on the same page has been very helpful.
Yeah, I think especially as like CEOs are getting younger, or even as the older, like kind of the older generation is more clued into how effective it can be. I think, yeah, that kind of using data to stabilize your um, current employee base, I think is really a significant upside. All right, so then to our last question of the day, do you think we're in an AI tech bubble? So this one is really controversial, especially for like just across the internet. If you look up this question, you're gonna get 1,000 different responses. But I've, for the sake of this, I've picked out one that suggests that we are. So there, you could find a contradictory one, I'm sure. But so this is according to Morningstar News from an article entitled "The AI Bubble is Looking Worse Than the Dot-Com Bubble. The Numbers Prove It." The author states, if generative AI is going to pay off in labor productivity, it has to generate enough revenue to justify its cost. We are not the first to ask this question. Sequoia's David Kane estimated that $600 billion in annual generative AI revenue is needed to justify the current investments in generative AI, a figure that is probably more than 100 times the current annual revenues for OpenAI's ChatGPT, Google's Gemini, Microsoft's Copilot, and similar services. The New York Times reported that OpenAI anticipates $5 billion in losses on $3.7 billion in revenue this year. Nonetheless, OpenAI received $6.6 billion in additional funding to keep it afloat, and which valued the company at $157 billion. That certainly echoes the dot-com bubble, but Goldman Sachs' Jim Cavello, Citadel's Ken Griffin, and market strategist Ed Yardeni all warned that the AI bubble could be even worse. So I'll go first on this one, just because I have a lot of feelings on the on the AI stuff. I think Gabe and I both do,
Oh yeah.
and just putting it out there as kind of an obvious disclaimer, which I think most people would agree with, that machines are very good at doing what only machines can. People are very good at doing what only people can, and you should really AI should be used largely for the spaces where people just are not going to be able to perform those tasks. So something like if you have like photo assignment, that was the classic one of having tagging photos and then having machines like sort through them essentially. So, and I think as we see, particularly with these like large language models and with image generation and all that, I think we're seeing very obviously AI get into some uncomfortable territory where it's starting to essentially replicate tasks that only humans could. So I think that is definitely concerning for obviously people who previously did all those tasks. I don't know if it would completely replace them. It's hard to say. I don't think anyone really in the world right now knows exactly what the limits are of what AI can and can't do. Because again, they're kind of leaping over barriers that were previously thought insurmountable. And also too, there's the questions of what is ethical for machines to do. I mean, I know for a fact that many of these image generation sites that like tout their AI stuff have taken them from essentially coercing or exploiting or straight up just like stealing content from things they didn't have the right to. So I don't know when the legal hammer will drop on those things. Big tech seems to have a really good way of avoiding that happening. So who knows? The jury's still out, but I think in terms of if we are in a bubble, I definitely lean toward yes, just for the reasons that were described there, as well as it, when it comes to what people are willing to pay for, right? Everybody likes doing chat GPT queries for free. Are they going to like it when it's like $1 a query? Are they going to like it when they have to pay $30 a month? Are companies going to be comfortable continuing to pay for all their APIs if those jump 20, 30, 50%? Again, we've seen with like subscription services, subscription services seem to have no qualms whatsoever about raising the price whenever they want. And I think if you're a B2B company, it's going to get harder and harder to get your companies to agree to those terms, especially considering the fact that the genie's out of the box. They can kind of build their own AI model if they have a couple of PhDs out there in their talent pool. So, but also too, so you have kind of the pull of, are people gonna be able to pay for it and continue to find it valuable? But then you also have the push of just the technology, the costs to it are astronomical. I mean, there was a report that came out, I think 2 weeks ago, that said that the water and electricity consumption for a given large language model query was like 10 times more than previously estimated. I think it was like a full, I could look it up as we're talking maybe, but it was like a full glass of water, essentially 8 ounces, I think, maybe more, was what was required to cool the electronics for one query. So I know that like I think it's Microsoft and Google are looking into working to literally fund nuclear reactor construction in order to pay for it, which is crazy. If you try to think about a business use that's so important, you have to build nuclear power facilities for it, you know? So I think they're definitely betting big, but I think the jury is definitely out as to if it's going to pay off because, it takes a lot of time to have handmade work done for sure. But again, there's just so many unknowns and variables on if it's going to be sustainable to essentially like use these generative techniques going forward. Gabe, I know you want to hop on this question.
Yeah, this one's an interesting one, especially with like Microsoft's Copilot, just because so many businesses utilize Microsoft 365 and Copilot is, whether it's an online or a desktop license being integrated into a lot of different workforces and places. And so, there's that element of, Microsoft kind of being a staple within the industry of, this is what we operate off of, Outlook, Teams.
Right.
So they do have that kind of advantage, but I do think they are kind of overextending themselves. I'd have to agree with you there. It's, like I said, become kind of this arms race to see who can kind of push the envelope as far as possible. And like you said, with even NielsenIQ, Circana, like smaller companies than that, they're already developing their own AI systems and large language models and different things like that to, essentially not need to have to pay for these licenses. So
Right.
at a certain point, I could totally see us dropping our Copilot license that we currently have and just going off of our own large language model that we've, put together through our data science team and, through customer feedback and input and continuous learning from that kind of, cycle. So I think there is a bit of a bubble here. And like you said, just the enormous resource cost that this, consumes to generate for a large language model and have every query. It's on the forefront of our minds as we build out these AI systems.
Yeah. Savannah, I know that this is kind of a somewhat sensitive topic given your firm's connection to these companies. So
No, it's not.
only feel like what you want to personally represent as those,
Yes,
as
personal
yourself.
views. I can see both sides of the coin. My take is we might be in like an AI hype cycle right now, but that doesn't mean obviously it's here to stay. So I think the key is being adaptable to it and filtering noise from reality. It depends on the type of company you are and how thoughtfully you're able to adopt it to solve specific problems instead of just chasing the hype without strategy attached to it. So I love using it personally. I think it's been super valuable in my work life and beyond. So I'm kind of impartial. I can see arguments for both being in a bubble or not, but being adaptable to it is number one because it's not going anywhere.
Graham, anything you want to add on to this?
Yeah, whether it's here to stay, I don't know, but at least on social media, it's pretty huge right now, and I've seen it be pretty successful if it's implemented properly. A lot of the storytelling videos will use like the generative AI and things like that, and creators make money from that. So I think it's going to be around for a while. Don't know about the sustainability of it if we're needing power plants for it, but yes, that remains to be seen.
Yeah, good point there for AI storytelling as kind of an output of this. And I think, it is hard too, because I'm sure AI will come up on the podcast again in the future. And I think it's interesting too, because you also have people that are using AI for creative purposes. Like business is not the sole user of AI by far. So I think that it is kind of an interesting dual purpose technology. So it's hard to predict where it will go. But at least, people are aware of it. I mean, during the dot-com bubble and all that, I think just the hype cycles can be, as Savannah put, the hype cycles can be so powerful. It's so easy to get swept up in them. But I think as more of them have passed, you have a larger proportion of contrarians willing to kind of keep their finger on the pulse before things get out of hand. So again, that's just speculating. It's the whole thing of to say, I feel like every week something comes out that tells you the exact opposite of what you heard the previous week. So
Contradiction. I will say
Yeah.
a lot of I have several friends who are in the creator space, content creators, and they definitely use it as a valuable tool for helping write captions or editing captions, coming up with ideas and hooks and call to actions, things like that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, I think that's all we've got for today. I just want to say thank you once again to our wonderful guests here, Gabe and Savannah. Appreciate them taking time. They could be going out on couples dates and things to come in and shoot the. No, I can't. I don't want to say that. Discuss things with Graham and I. Yeah. So appreciate that.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank
Very
you.
welcome. Yep. Well, that's it for us today. If you're watching this episode, you should be expecting a new one out in about 2 weeks. And you should be able to also get a hold of this through YouTube or Apple Podcasts. We have some more content that you should be seeing in your feed along with our regular releases. So that's it for today. Everyone take care and have a good one.
Thank you.